I'm hopeful that, in this case, good science, good thinking by humans, good experiments can help humans learn and then teach and then experience improvements in practices. The divine love and a divine existence, yes, created all that we can see, all that we can experience, but asks of us, expects of us, to be good agents or good servants, and to also continue to create and generate more about our world, which is better for humanity and better for the world. Hi, I'm Max Pitt. I work for Graceland University, and we're out on Graceland's test plot. And at present, it is growing a cover crop. It was planned last fall, so you may be able to see this green is wheat. Would have been planted in early November, and it emerged in November, and then it went dormant through the winter, and then this spring obviously has re-emerged and is continuing to grow. In the coming days, it will be sprayed to kill it down, and then we will plant corn in this area. So the real story here is the cover crop. Re-emerging throughout, especially the U.S. right now, is the value of putting a cover crop on the field after harvest, or even getting the seeds on the ground sometimes before harvest, and we're standing in a spot that has an example of both. There were soybeans that were growing here last year, and then within 2 days of the soybeans being harvested, we drilled the seeds, the wheat seeds, into what you can see this way. So you can see it's uniform. You may even be able to sense there's little rows of it that happen because of the drill that places the seeds in the ground. So that uniformity and consistency, but more important, the value of cover crop is not just what you see above the ground, but what's happened below the ground, even through the winter. Even as there were little roots that existed, that creates the opportunity for bacteria and fungus to grow, and in doing so, it enhances the soil. So it's a well-documented outcome. The scientists from Natural Resources, NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service, are really the scientists that are behind telling us we as producers are now readopting this practice and figuring out how to make it practical. So you can see where I'm standing, there's no wheat growing, and for that matter, it is reflective of having been harvested last year, but without any seeds put in the ground for it to grow. If you pan on around, you can see in a little bit of the distance here, the taller green, that's actually rye. And the seeds were flown on in mid-October with an airplane. And the great thing about being able to fly on with the airplane is there were still soybeans that were standing here. And so the seeds from the rye seeds went through the standing crop onto the ground. And then we were fortunate within just a couple of days that we had a good rain. And those seeds, where the seeds landed, did germinate. What we get to see here is that we have a sample of the cover crop. This is literally some of that wheat that we were just out in. And we're going to pour water in the top, and it'll treat it like rain, like it's raining down on this sample of soil that's in here that has the cover crop still growing out of it. I just pulled this morning, or just took the sample this morning. What we're going to watch is to see the water filter through down to here, and the water that runs off into here. So it's just a way to get an idea of how water moves through the soil and off from the soil. So in this top pail, this quantity of water, about 24 ounces of water, it's going to serve as a rain. So we're getting a pretty heavy rain onto that cover crop, and then what we're watching is then how much of it actually runs out and over the top versus does any of it make it down through the soil into the bottom. And it looks like the vast majority, although there's starting to be some that's working its way through, the majority has gone ahead and ran off. Now this is a function of lots of things, but you're able to see that there is some water that does penetrate. Even on short notice, it penetrates and drips into the bottom. And what drips in is very clear. Because of the makeup of the soil, having been covered and having basically not been tilled in its past, that it allows for that water to filter better. What we see with very tilled soil is it seals off and no water runs through. We've been tilling the earth for years, for generations, for centuries. And understandable, the needs to do that, or to create a good seed bed, to battle with weeds that would not allow the crop to produce something then that was helpful or useful for feeding people and feeding animals. But as we've had the opportunity to learn how to create high yields, but without having the soil be in this kind of shape, and rather it be in this kind of shape or this kind of shape, we have a responsibility to share that. And as the world can adopt that, we have the opportunity to improve productivity, yes, but also reduce pollutants in our rivers and lakes and in the world's water system, because of having soil that holds and retains better than we knew that it would. This demonstration is to show how soil behaves in the water. So we have 4 cylinders of water, little metal grates in the top of each of those cylinders. We'll set a clod of soil in each of the cylinders. The first one says the word tilled on the sign, and that's because this clod comes from a field that has been tilled for years. So we think of traditional tillage in Iowa or anywhere as being the conventional, or the way in which farming happened. You plowed, and then eventually they got away from moldboard plowing into discs, and then eventually got into even what they now call field cultivating. So there's less tillage, but in some places there's still a significant amount of tillage, and this soil is soil that has been tilled significantly. I'm going to go ahead and place it in, and then I'm going to go get another one that is not been tilled and set it in a different cylinder, just to watch the behavior of the 2 different types of clods. Can't hardly get back here fast enough, and that one, as you can see, is just nearly disintegrating just by sitting in cold water. No detergent, no anything. That's just water that's in there. The next one that I'm wanting to work on is this clod. Looks about the same to the human eye. The difference is it's not, the soil has not been tilled. So in farming language, just no-till is what they call it. So planting into soil that has not been plowed, has not been disked, has not been field cultivated. I'll tape this on there, just to remind folks that, hey, this is a clod of soil that's going in, that has come from a field that has not been tilled. Don't even know when it ever was, or if it ever was. So one of the things to take note of is there's some bubbles coming off from it, so the water is penetrating. But even notice the color of the water on that one as it continues to disintegrate. And this one, then some pieces fall off from it, but there's still, even though there's even a rock in that one, it doesn't get cloudy, and the water, the way in which it is soaking up the water, does not allow, or doesn't, the soil itself doesn't just make the water all milky or muddy as you might think for. So for most of us, because we're used to clods of soil that have been tilled, that isn't uncommon for us. We expect it to be almost muddy looking water. What's surprising to some of us, myself included today, is how clear this water is, even though that big clod of soil is sitting in it. Some of the pieces are falling off as water penetrates the clod, but it doesn't make the water all mucky. Now, what's going on in there? The microbial bacteria and the fungus that is inside the soil, that holds the soil together, that makes it a better, richer, more resilient soil. This is the demonstration of what happens if you do not till the soil, and then consistent with not tilling is the cover cropping practices. With regard to spirituality, humans have long recognized the connectedness between the sacred, the spiritual, the physical. I've appreciated, and I do appreciate, current Community of Christ theology in this area. That a sense of the divine is in all and through all. And that recognizing God and the divine from that water to that soil to this light to these material things, that somehow in and through all that there is divine love. Even this videoing and looking at cover crops and looking at soil and how it behaves in water ties back to an effort and awareness out of healthy theology as a greater awareness about healthy systems, even down to the very roots of what produces food to feed and to feed the billions, and the need for us to respond. I'm drawn into the Doctrine and Covenants, a reminder that in their welfare resides our welfare.